first two classes, and I recorded those responses where you see that the bold-faced questions starting at the bottom of the second page. What does reciting these words mean to you? What are you doing when you say the creed? And I recorded all the responses that I think about 5 or 6 of you returned those questionnaires. And so I've included your responses to those on these. So I invite you to look through those just to see the variety of perspectives, the variety of experiences, and it is a very wide variety of experiences of the creed. From people who say this is a deep part of my worship life. This is something that means a great deal. I appreciate the tradition. I appreciate doing that. It feels like it gives worship some depth and some gravitas when I do it. To people who are assisting ministers who say, I feel like I'm lying when I lead the creed because I don't believe so much of what it says. That's the variety of experiences, and then other things in between. So what I thought we would do today, and I really appreciate Paul Voitis referred me to the website of the Evangelical Lutheran Church and looking at the variety of things that are on that website just about worship and what worship means and what we're doing in worship. And then it also included a creed that was part of the 2016 churchwide assembly that was put together by Dr. Kelly Sherman Conroy, who's a member of the Oglala Sioux tribe and is a liturgist with the denomination, works, teaches at Luther, just got her PhD at Luther Seminary, and teaches at a variety of places. And she recently led the Tri-Synod gathering up in Sandusky just last month. And she has created a creed that is in here, sort of trying to reflect the Christian tradition and the Native American tradition and blending those together. So I included also a couple of you have referred to a creed by the United Church of Canada, which I included in the original several handouts. Do you know? That we said each week. One of the things that has come up in our conversations is the possibility of not either simply continuing to do what we do, reciting the creed every Sunday, and then not dispensing with it, but simply perhaps having a rotation of different statements of faith that might reflect some different sensibilities. So as a way to simply explore what we might do that could perhaps speak to a variety of people's concerns and needs and desires. So anything that anyone wishes to just sort of share before we kind of just sort of look at some of these some of these different creeds, statements, covenants. Yes.
Your sermon this morning inspired me to jot some few things down. So this is hot. I mean, I'm not sure I agree with what I've got written. I just wrote it down minutes ago. But there's yet another way of thinking in line with this morning's message. And that's not to change the introduction we use to the creed. We've got an introduction that sort of moves it back a bit.
And that introduction is on the first page at the very beginning of your handout. So,
as expressed in historic words, there might be a different way of saying that. Okay, make the traditional creeds and the various diverse expressions of faith that we might choose to use more palatable to more people.
And that is, yeah, that has been mentioned before, the idea of perhaps reframing this language at the beginning.
Reframing listening.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, Bill.
To follow up on what I said, I'm doing these here and Larry. It's too bad Brandon wasn't here.
So Brad is up. His church that he grew up in Upper Sandusky is saying goodbye to their church musician who's been there like 50 years. Well, like she was every today, and so that's why he is up there.
Yeah, I'm luck too for that matter. Exactly the way you describe in your sermon today as people who could not accept the Old Testament God as the God of our years. That's why Marcion, the first to kind of compose a sort of canon, wrote back the Old Testament and wrote and only used New Testament writings, was because he didn't believe that God could be included. And we do include it because obviously Orthodoxy greater than we are now. But that could be the thinking about some of the other things, but I'm going to say in that video, you can almost read the creed as a playbook for the early Christian controversies and which ones they rejected. So I think about the Father Almighty, Maker of heaven and earth, is affirming that the God worshipped the Israelites was the Father of the one God. And that's against worship. You can also see in here the attacks against the Gnostics who said that Jesus only appeared to be a human being, he wasn't an actual man. And that comes up several times in between. He was actually born, he was crucified. You got to try to have a human body to do that. So they are putting a human interpretation that Jesus was a real human being and not just some kind of evening nights. I usually forget what that heresy was. Can you guys help me out on this? Okay. It's probably in there somewhere too, but in other words, one way to view the Apostles' Creed might just be go through it and say, here's where this links up with the controversies of the early centuries of the Christian Church.
And does that historical context, Bill, then shape it's your understanding or your sense of its if it's used today, if it was primarily talking about controversies in the first several centuries of Christianity, what impact did that have in terms of our use of it today?
It is in another dimension. The pagans at the time of the early Christian Church did not put emphasis on what you believed or what you did. And that's why not offering incense to the image of Caesar was so bad. They didn't care what you believed, and there were many gods, many religions, that was okay. So the idea that your faith became defined by what you believed internally was a new dimension to religion, at least Judaism and Christianity. So putting that into Bible story. The context of the creed was just a way of stating how that idea grew, that what you said you believed became an important part of what your religion was about, not just about what you sacrificed to how you behaved or whatever.
Mhm. So the fact that the creed does not include lists of how we respond to faith or what we do to live out our love for Jesus. This was sort of a newer idea that faith was about about belief, about saying this is what I.
And we've seen that since it survived, and with Nicene Creed and Apostolic Creed, and none of them do the same thing. I think you're right, when else is right, that it was becoming an issue about what you believed, not about what you did.
Okay. Okay. And what some people have said in terms of some of their concerns about the creed being used each week is that it doesn't say it doesn't call us to say this is what we do, this is how we live out our faith.
No, not so much as it's a formulation which comes from 1700 years ago.
Well, I think that's a key point. So it was written in the time it was written, with inflection, the context that was going on at that time, just like your sermon. Aren't you excited that we actually listened to your sermon? Yeah. Some patience here. Okay. And so we've updated that. They actually updated the Lord's Prayer to make it more meaningful to people and to be more contemporary in its language. But we don't seem to want to touch this particular creed for some reason. And of course, it's little and aged over 300 years. It's no surprise, right? So, I mean, I like the repetition. I was raised in catechism, all that stuff. But there are words in here that are great on that doesn't mean I necessarily want to rock the world to get that done. But I don't see God as Father, right? I see Him as more omnipotent, non-gender based, right? However, how we want that in here. But as you go through here, we can all sort through and say there are words we like and don't like and things we like to change. I don't know, does the church give a more updated or current or contemporary version of this? They've done it to everything else.
Well, it's been a little updated actually, because you used to say like the quick and the dead. It used to say, there used to be some differences in how this is done. What we will do, and this is very different, but we'll look at the closest thing to that is the quite different one, which is the Native American creed, which is later on. But yeah, so yeah.
Well, John's struck another note, and that was it's interesting note how many Christian denominations, usually not major ones, have dispensed with creeds entirely. We have friends who are Quakers.
My whole dad's side of the family were all in the Church of the Brethren, which is like Quaker and Mennonite, and they always said no creed but Christ. I mean, that was they were not. That's not a creedal denomination. So it really varies. It depends on what we grew up in, what we're used to, what we're accustomed to.
This is one other point of view. So the Nazarene Church in Grove City and the Lutheran Church in Grove City, St. John's. So St. John's was doing some outreach into the community, and they used this creed as their outreach. And my friends at the Nazarene Church thought it was the greatest thing they had ever seen.
They would not have used that.
They'd never seen it before. They just thought it was a really great statement of faith.
Yeah.
And today okay, great. So in response in today's society to these words.
So ideas about updating, about perhaps changing some language.
Well, I think we also have to address when a statement of legal belief is appropriate. Again, is worship the space? I know we've all grown up with it. Well, other churches Lutheran churches have said not in worship. We'll hold it for other times, baptism, confirmation. And again, let's keep the stranger and the visitor in mind as to what is inclusive and welcoming. I'm not sure worship is a place we have to make this statement of legal.
Mhm. But you said perhaps when there are baptisms of new members are joining, perhaps using it.
Making a statement of faith, you're joining the congregation, you're joining the faith, this is what the faith believes.
Anyone else before we sort of just look at a couple of things? Yeah, Paul, and just say, go ahead, Paul.
I was just, I'm, saying for what Mary said, mostly.
Okay.
It matters. I mean, I spend a lot of time. That I would say is appropriate for the congregation. And I don't even know that we really want to do it by a local committee. And I know many committees can be trouble. Narrow and shallow. I know I in church.
Something else. So something like they say that a congregation might create does not feel like that there may be other ways to respond to some of the concern.
In terms of a creedal statement,
Right.
I mean, if we want to have a more
Leaves and stuff.
I read, I don't quite know what it is. I mean, we want to make some sort of a statement about how we as a congregation are responding to the invitation of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
I think that can be perfectly fine. That's something that we can put together. I mean, but we're going to say something formal and give it something like a creedal name.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would rather that we not hammer that out because I know I'm not qualified.
Okay.
I mean, I have my own feelings, but that's to me, that's a completely different statement than a creedal statement.
Mm-hmm.
I view this as I'm not just a member of this congregation, I'm a member of the entire orchestra or the entire community that is trying to follow Christ.
And so would you say that a creedal statement, I guess what would you think of like the role that the creed has in worship now, where we say this every week? Will you sort of agree with me that perhaps a creedal statement might not be necessary every week?
I would agree with that.
But it sounds like too also you're saying though that a statement, when we'll look in here at the covenant that a congregation I worked with wrote, that might not be something that you might have in worship, but might have because does that feel like
I mean, I could add at the very beginning of worship, having a statement of you're welcome, folks, right? That we, whatever, we feel that we're called to respond to Christ by doing X, Y, and Z. A statement like that, and not doing creed and worship, I think I would be fine with that. I don't have any objection to that. I don't know whether that's the right thing to do, but it's not option that seems not unreasonable to me.
Okay. Al, you were going to say something, and then you, Karen.
Well, I stand with both Paul and Mary, and but I wanted to just underline, and I did underline, your closing sentence in this paper on the back page, where I almost quoted.
And this is from the ELCA website on worship.
Yeah, good. Okay, well, if that's where it comes from, good. But the second last sentence there says, faith then is not about intellectually agreeing to a set of beliefs, but about living in a trusting relationship with God, and I would add, and God's people, in response to God's grace. And the key word for me there is intellectually. Using a creed to exclude people who have a different perception of God's grace in their lives, to me does nothing to build Christian community, and is certainly not what this Christian community is about, or what I am about. Language keeps changing, it keeps evolving. And what means something to some person means something else to another person, like your little joke earlier, the quick and the dead. Well, that's pedestrians in New York and Chicago today. It used to be people who are living for died, and now it means something utterly different. Yeah, and we've got to acknowledge that. What meant something in the Apostles' Creed 2,000 years ago doesn't necessarily carry that meaning for us today. Different understanding.
Yeah. Sure.
I was just going to say that what Paul was describing seems to me more like the mission statement
Yeah.
that a congregation has rather than an actual creed.
Yeah, you can certainly bring it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Well, why don't we just,
I do think that the ELCA language, thank you, Paul, for sending us there, you know, that who is God and what the Christians
Yeah.
believe. Wow, that's good stuff.
there's some really, really good stuff.
Saying, you know, so we update the
Yeah.
language and that.
We heard the church do it.
Yeah, because the church do it for us. Yeah. Yeah.
It's in their language, but for us to feel like we're entitled to create a new creed for the literature during this other image.
Yeah. So why don't we just read through together a couple of these things that are here, and just to see what it sounds like and what sort of our gut reactions to them are. Yeah, just kind of see, and we'll also include the questions that several of you have referred to from the denomination, that, you know, whether they could be morphed into some sort of a statement of faith or worship, or if that would be helpful or not. But on the third page of the handout, at the bottom, the United Church of Canada Statement of Faith, which several people responded to in the questionnaire, the initial questionnaire. So why don't we just let's say these words together. Everybody find it, the page 3, bottom of the page. That's assuming back to back is 1 and 2. The first page is back to back 1 and 2, and then the second full sheet is. Okay, let's start. We are not alone. We are in God's world, which has created and is creating, who has Son in Jesus, the Word made flesh, to reconcile one and make new. You've seen us and others by the Spirit. We trust in God. We are hungry to be the church, to celebrate God's presence, to live with respect in creation, to love and serve others, to seek justice and resist evil, to proclaim Jesus crucified and risen, for a judge and people. Life, death, and life beyond death, God is with us. We are not alone, but seeks God. Just any responses to that?
Wonderful.
What does this?
And why do you say wonderful, Mary?
It's the gist of it all. It's the crux of it, and there's thankfully there's nothing objectionable.
It's inclusive.
It is.
When you say the gist of it all, you like this is what it's.
That's the heart of it. I mean, this is what should have been. And the apostles, I mean, it's about how we are. You know, what it prompts us to be and do. You know, we're to love and serve others, to seek justice, resist evil. I mean, this is language I think that can speak to us.
Okay. And you said your response, you said a word or two.
Inclusive.
Inclusive was the word you used. Yeah, okay. Okay. And what's inclusive about this?
People in rather than builds walls to keep people out, except perhaps for the word believe.
Okay.
I might tweak that word believe in the second line, just something like that, but.
And John, you asked a question or something.
Yeah, I think I need Martin Luther to tell me, what does this mean? Yes, I mean, there are phrases in here that are empty to me. We are called to be the church. What the heck does that mean?
It spells it
After
out.
the colon is what that
It
means.
spells it out.
It spells out. See, what this is written as, like, we believe in God, colon, and then it says who we see God to
Okay,
be.
I get that now, so I guess I wonder, why do we have to say we are called to be the church? Why don't we just say we are called to celebrate God's
Okay.
presence, to live with respect in creation, to love and serve others?
I think
That seems more straightforward to me.
Okay.
What does it mean when we say, we use it a couple of times in here, we are not alone? I'm wondering about that length. It's, up at the top, it says we live in God's world. I'm wondering about, I mean, so that just says God is the creator, basically, right?
So I think it just follows that God is with us. Therefore, we are not alone.
But the universe is alive and not dead.
I mean, at the end, we say we are not alone again.
Mhm.
And literally comes life in the universe right before that.
Are not alone is a powerful statement.
It is.
What does that say to you?
I mean, that's part of why I come to church, because I'm not alone. We're not alone. We are a community of faith. We are a community. When I came to this church, I had been away from church for a while. I never doubted that God loved me. But I remember Al saying, you know, if it isn't about community, if it isn't about fellowship, I had been alone. I believed God loved me, but I had also been judged for these present and felt alone otherwise. And so I think we are not alone. It's something that we use plenty of times in other ways, John. I don't know why it doesn't feel inclusive to you, why it doesn't like it. You come and you say, we're not alone. That is a real essence of my faith and of what I think God calls us to.
I don't know that this language captures that essence of community. I feel like this is speaking to the relationship between an individual and God. So when it says we are not alone, we live in God's world, I'm not sure that says to me, I live in a community of believers in God's world. And then down here at the bottom, when it says God is with us, we are not alone, that speaks pretty directly to God is with us. It doesn't really, again, capture community in the way, I agree with the way you capture community, but I'm not sure this language.
It never uses I. It always uses we.
Yeah, but you can use we and be referring to the individual relationship of all those people with God.
John, would it help if it's
I'm not saying we have to wordsmith this. I'm saying the reaction. So it's an example where you can get lost in language just as easily as you can get lost in language. It's one of your statements.
But what if it said we are not alone, together live in God's world?
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's
Yeah, I just wanted to get what people's just responsive to you.
It's bad. I don't mind, but it's not like. So yeah, we're gonna use this as a way. No,
I think that really gets your argument. That wording was kind of negative, the way it's phrased there. But we are not alone. And to me, it would seem like a better one would be to say, we are creating community.
yeah, that's true.
And I'm thinking specifically in our times, ever since the pandemic, and we're slowing now, scholars are reporting a large increase in the sense of loneliness among people.
I'm maybe just out of the loop with people that I think surely everyone has experienced giving love. And so we are not alone. I feel is a universal system. It is for all of us. So,
And so for you to have that expressed in a statement.
it isn't about just me. I feel like when I come to church, I feel like there are other people that felt alone during this week and,
Mhm.
it just, I think it's a human condition to have times in your life where, where you feel alone.
In every new member class I have ever been part of, in every church I've worked in, when I say why, what are you looking for in church? Why do you come? Community, 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 community. It's always the first thing that people say. Other, yeah,
Is, we're gonna talk about mysterious language, word made flesh.
Yeah,
No, yeah, we're at this. Not good, not bad, you know, what we,
yeah, that was pretty true much. Sure.
and judge.
I agree, I think that gets into the intellectual side. When I would say the same thing, although I realize I'm a minority view, with the way the text is written. But I'm just into intellectual belief, not objective reality.
So, yeah, some of those are patterned after the creed itself, who will come to judge the living and the dead, the resurrection of the body. So some of those, yeah, some of those pieces. There are responses to just this statement. And again, this was just offered as a different thing. Yeah, Michelle.
I just want to push back on John. Statement, we are called to be the church. And I don't know if I can verbalize this that well, but it drives me crazy in today's world, a lot of people that walk away from church because they don't think of church as a place and there's all these special beliefs. But to me, we are the church, and this is what we should be doing, those things that follow the semicolon there, or the colon, I'm sorry, like to celebrate God's presence, to do those things. But what gives a positive spin on church compared to what some people think church?
So can these things happen outside of a church congregation?
Well, I mean, to me, that's an idea. It's not a building, and it's not like we have to go to church, but we are called to be the church, and we gather together in community to go to yeah. I don't know. See, I'm not good at phrasing all this. I like
God's beloved, celebrate God's presence, or be called to be God's community, or I don't know. Just
you're saying in our room, just in the pond.
church counseling had that. It's the class spin on church.
Yes.
That's the case where the language in a way has locked us in and changes. The very word church is a relatively very in Germanic languages, Kirch and Kirche in German. That's where we get it from. The New Testament doesn't use the word church except as ecclesia, which means a group of people called out. So that we're thrown into a different kind of community in the church as opposed to but the word church doesn't convey the community sense that the musician word is, and it's when it's so typical to be the building was real sitting there and like that.
Yeah.
Cultivate community.
Yeah.
Any other folks that haven't had a chance to speak? Yeah, Larry, and then yeah, Larry first.
I was hearing that we are not alone from the beginning of it, and in the context of various meanings of the word church, in kind of a different way. This is a statement of the United Church of Canada, and I heard the first "we" referring to that because it's their statement. We are not alone is a statement that says not everybody who is God's beloved is part of the United Church of Canada. And then hearing that we are called to be the church, capital C, but not restricted by the United Church of Canada. We are called to be, the universal church of the people of God, the gathered people of God.
I like the way Bishop Elizabeth Eaton does it. She doesn't talk about the church. She says, hello, church. and makes that in the yes to people. She's been doing that consistently since she became bishop. I love it.
So literally, it sounds like you sort of see this as a progressively wider embrace of who the we includes.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, for somebody walking in off the street, that sounds kind of cryptic.
Okay. Donna.
Well, I wanted to address the part of the Trinity. You know, I always have trouble with the Trinity. And so this is a little, maybe a little bit better. Who has come in Jesus? So I'm glad it is not saying the Son. And the word made flesh. Flesh is a problematic. But it does address all three persons of the Trinity, but in a perhaps a more acceptable way to me. I always have trouble with God creating
Okay.
the world. I just really feel that every now and then.
Okay. Yes, John.
Just as we read it, it had enough, that goes back to the creed, the Lutheran creed, but I know it was a creed.
Yeah.
You know, they had enough play, but I can see there's an updated version of our creed in many ways, and actually, that was my name.
Yes, Elizabeth.
But in the last line, when God is with us, that I see how I think that's supposed to be, but I am having a reaction to that because a lot of people use God is with us to mean God is with us and not. And I don't know if there's a way to make that.
So it feels like God's on our side, basically. Yeah. I am so you are so about giving just a variety of you, but to really be able to sort of see this is what I hear, you know, and so yeah, not you, not others. Okay.
Look at your, let's look like present, God.
Yeah. Yeah, and what we mean certainly can sounds like this is what's intended. Right. Yes, right. People can hear. Yeah. Okay.
I just,
Yeah.
I am not to a very good study of God, but when I to live with respect and creation, to me, that was like the creation of theory, barring evolution.
Oh, so when you read to live with respect in creation, instead of hearing something like we need to respect creation, it feels like that's an affirmation of creationism over evolution.
I just went to me first when I first read it, I wondered if people would be able to say, see, in your creed, you respect creation, you know, the foundations, and there is a great answer. So,
Anyone else?
Yeah, sorry. It strikes me, I like to see like consistent structure like that. So I see the use of the semicolon, which you guys pointed out in that one earlier. But so it says, we are not alone, semicolon, there's stuff to follow. Do you believe in God? That's a semicolon there, right?
Yeah, oh my God.
That's a colon.
And then we are called to be the church. Is that a colon?
That's a colon.
And then there's the standalone, we trust in God. I just like, come on, do the same thing. Each sort of signaling thing.
All right.
Why do they do that like that? And I like the explanatory stuff following after like a statement of belief.
Okay.
Well, I guess like
Well, I mean,
first of all, I don't like we live in God's world for some reason. I don't like that whole first line still, sorry.
Okay.
But we trust in God, like it's all staying on. Why did we start with it?
Okay. Now what, trust was Martin Luther's favorite word for belief, right? Believe? I think trust was his, he would sort of says, but that is what this is about. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Very interesting.
Okay. Super. Now this is a very different thing. The thing in the bottom of the next page is something that one of the congregations I worked with, because the United Church of Christ does not consider itself a creedal church. It is based certainly on, it draws on the ancient creeds of the church, traditional creeds of the church, but it did not have anything, it didn't have anything in worship that kind of said what the creed said. This is who we are. So a congregation I worked with said that they wanted to have something that would remind them who they were and to let visitors know who they were. So this is something that was created over about a 3-month period. That then this congregation said each week, it was their dedication to the offering. So basically, when the offering came, instead of having to come up with a prayer dedication every week, this was something that said, we dedicate our offerings and our lives, and this is who we are. So why don't we read this one at the bottom of the next page and just kind of see what this sounds like. And again, this is not a creed. This is what's called a covenant. So let's read this together. The Spirit of Peace, the United Church of Christ, is a progressive Christian community where believers, seekers, and doubters of all churches come together to serve and live the love of Jesus Christ. We love people just as they are. We give more and pray for each other and the world around us. We pray that as questions and changes about following Jesus in these ways, we promote peace, justice, joy, and understanding in everything we do. Amen. Any responses to that? Yeah. Oh.
Was that in worship?
This was used in every week in worship. This was their dedication to the offering. So basically, this is there in worship to sort of say, just as toward the very before the closing hymn, that reminded people that the idea was to sort of say, this reminds us who we are, and as we leave the church, how we're supposed to live. That was the idea behind this.
See, feels to me like more a blend of a welcome statement and a mission statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have that printed,
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if it was verbalized and read. So,
Yeah, it seems kind of strange certain places toward the end of the service.
Because these are like welcome statement.
welcome, that's right.
Okay.
It sort of sounds like your introduction in a sense.
Well, yeah. Well, and so there's a few parts that, yeah. Since busted. Yes. Other responses to this. Okay. Now let us jump to this Native American, this one that was part of a Native American Lutheran thing. If people like anything like this, this can certainly be shortened. This is a long statement, but just again to get a feel for a different kind of a creed, and this uses language that's clearly like a creed. So, and there are a few phrases that to me feel a little bit awkward, but let's just read through this statement on the next page and see what it sounds like. Okay. We believe in Creator, Spirit, who all believes and all is in it intervening, who spoke the creed, forming word and all wood, who created and set them free to live in love and so they live a supreme and community with all. We believe in Creator, Son, and other, who does live beyond our understanding, love creation, and to share humanity, to rejoice and to despair, to set before us the paths of life and death, and to show that and die. We're finally to honor him and housed ready to himself for all time. We believe creation which rises to truth through faith. Like community of oneness, experience uplifting and sustaining grace. That we may fulfill our human responsibility to reach out to our neighbor and organize that we rejoice in the constant nature of creation and the wondrous joy of life itself. We believe in Creator, whose word teaches us that all things grow together, the surface of life, but the paths of life and death, good and evil, to human come together. And choices are not purely defined, like they're consciously and responsibly thread to the path we choose, and only the true one can be our judge. We believe in Creator, who is present and working in this world through all creation.
That's the length of it net is comparable to the Nicene Creed or the Athanasius. And pick out the key points, then if all of this creed is right.
And what do you, are there key points that you see in this, Karen, that you really are would want to affirm in any kind of a creed that we express in worship? Maybe that's too complicated. I don't need to. Yeah.
I'm not sure. Okay. What I will say is I have a friend who is 90-some% Native American. And she's also fundamentalist, evangelical, but that's beside the point. She also speaks of the Creator God, and she included an white eagle feather in my mother's casket, because that is Native American tradition for her. I just watched Little Bird on PBS the last 3 weeks, which was Native American and taking the children because they were not in a good home.
Oh, yeah.
And, and Native American philosophies about the nature and respecting nature and all that's in it. And that. So I'm thinking a lot of that, which makes an awful lot of sense, that we've been blowing it a lot.
Other responses to this?
Well, I just love it, but it is too long. There's a lot of redundancy in it. It could be shortened. This is great.
And along that lines being long, just listening to everybody try to read it together, I felt like we were very stumbly because there was so many words and phrases that if you're going to have a creed, you want it to feel powerful, like we're all in this together. And I felt like we were, and I know it was our first time we read it, but
but that's the thing to remember. Anything that might be used needs to be simple, clear, and
This was not meant to be something. Rambling. They use the word culture.
Yeah. In terms of the substance of it, not as much the trappings of how it's expressed, but in terms of what is expressed, what's
I can't really specify things, but I'll tell you my feeling was some phrases I really liked and some phrases just didn't, so it was a very much a mixture, not something that, which, is where I am with the Apostles' Creed too, so that's happening. I have always felt that Native Americans, that we could learn from them in terms of respect for our world and and how they live. So it isn't, and I have appreciated that the church is acknowledging more what Native American things, but this is really a mixture to me.
Yeah, I go along with that, it is more recognizing that, there's more in this world than just us human beings. Almost not the word nexus, which believes for God's purposes, but it does working purposes of many things in bacteria and other animals, and it's all tied together.
Okay. Yes, Larry.
Yeah, I guess I should start saying where I'm coming from. I'm at least part Cherokee, along with a mishmash of European heritage. And I've always appreciated the creator spirit type language. And when I read this the first time, I thought, wow, what a neat statement, though it is, a bit long. And when we read it together this time, it struck me as what a mishmash of loaded phrases from two different cultures that they're trying to put together something that will pass by all. And I was much less impressed with it.
Fascinating. Any other initial responses to this one? And why don't we, to sort of finish up for today, let's look through the things from the website that Al had us look at the last sentence, but and instead of reading it together, could somebody read, one person read the introduction to this section on the ELCA website, just so we hear these words and see if there might be a way to sort of put together some sort of statement based on some of these. Okay, so go ahead, Julianne.
All people seek meaning. This can come in the form of knowledge, relationships, spirituality, or organized religions. The Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, the ELCA, is part of the Christian Church. We believe God's grace, God's unfathomable love is available for all people as a gift through Jesus Christ. All are welcome here with their whole selves, which includes one's race, ethnic background, past wrongdoing, socioeconomic status, gender identity, sexual orientation, physical ability, and legal status. Questions and doubts are welcome.
Okay, and the next one, who's God? Someone want to read that?
Who is God? God, the creator of the world, the giver of life, the source of wholeness, healing, and forgiveness, the champion of the poor and the oppressed, the power of new life and resurrection. God creates, redeems, and continues to sustain the world. Christians know God as the Holy Trinity, one God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. As Christians, we believe all people are created in God's image and loved by God. We know about God thanks to the witness of the scriptures, and especially through Jesus Christ, who embodied God's love for humanity. God's grace is a gift, given through Christ and received by faith. There is nothing we can do on our own, good or bad, to earn this gift. We call this good news or the gospel. Through this gift of God, we are led by the Holy Spirit to love and work for justice and peace.
The next one?
What do Christians believe? Christians believe that God came to us in Jesus Christ, a true human, humble, and vulnerable. Jesus lived among us and demonstrated the good news in all he was and did. The good news is the promise that God loves us and saves us by grace alone. This promise was realized when Jesus was crucified. He died on the cross, but was raised again in the body and in a new wholeness. As a result, through the gift of grace received by faith, all people can be made whole in Christ and set free to love and serve all people, particularly when vulnerable
just as God loves us.
And the last one, which we looked at a bit before, but somebody could read that.
What is faith and why is it important? Martin Luther, after whom the Lutheran branch of Christianity is named, once wrote, "Faith is a living, daring confidence in God's grace, so sure and certain that you could stake your life on it 1,000 times. Through faith, a person will do good to everyone without coercion, willingly and happily, serving everyone, suffering everything for the love and praise of God, who has shown such grace. Faith, then, is not about intellectually agreeing to a set of beliefs, but about living in a trusting relationship with God in response to God's grace. It is a confident hope that living in God's promise sparks renewal to love and serve neighbors as God in Christ loves us."
It is 15 after. Next week is Emily Kent's class. And the second week in March, we're starting a 3-week class that Brad Benow is leading. I would like to have the first Sunday of March be a continuation of this. So take this home, pay attention, just be thinking about it. If you looked at this stuff, be thinking about, as we say the creed in worship again each week, think about what you might like, a bit more about what you might like to see, what your responses are to this, these 4 or 5 paragraphs from the ELCA. Just reflect a bit about what you might like to see, and we'll continue that in 2 weeks from today. Larry.
Yeah, and in light of this last section, I would kind of like us to add one more piece
Okay.
to what's going into this. We should all pick up a copy of whatever our current pamphlet is about Redeemer.
Yeah. It's out of the kiosk.
That I think is similar to this last kind of statement, which impresses me as a good thing for that kind of pamphlet. I'm not sure how much of it works in worship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.